Well, Doc, it's just so depressing. I only have one computer, and so I have to play games and edit videos on that one computer. So while I'm rendering videos, I can't play games. It's... Now tell me, have you ever tried playing games on your computer while you're rendering? That's amazing, Doc. I can't believe you came up with that. I have to go try it right now. Fly, little bird, fly! And make sure to pay the secretary on the way out.
New, interesting, random, tall guy films.
So the premise of this video is really simple. I try and do different things like web browsing, gaming, and video editing while I render a video. The goal is to see how render times are affected by each of those tasks. Let's start out by explaining the test situation. Each test was done while rendering the same segment from a short film I'm working on. The source files were 4K video files from a Lumix G7 being rendered as a 1080p file using YouTube's recommended upload settings. The render was done from a Premiere Pro project using Media Encoder. The test machine was running an i7-4790 processor, 16GB of RAM, and a 4GB GTX 960. I did 4 tests for this video: a baseline test, a web browsing test, a gaming test, and finally a video editing test. The baseline test was just Media Encoder rendering with nothing running in the background. For the web browsing test, I did a fairly standard amount of web browsing while the render was running, primarily listening to music on Pandora and browsing social media like Facebook and Twitter. For the gaming test, I played Elder Scrolls Skyrim, an older game, but I didn't want to push the hardware too hard since most people don't actually want to game while rendering a video. Video editing consisted of basic 1080p editing within Premiere. Before we get to the number comparison, let's run down my experience in each of the multitasking scenarios. Web browsing was fairly smooth, which is to be expected since it's not a very intensive task. There was definitely a slowdown, particularly in page loading times from what web browsing normally looks like on my computer, but nothing terrible. It would definitely be practical to browse the web while rendering a video. Gaming, on the other hand, was very difficult. I saw serious stuttering in Skyrim despite it being a very easy game to play on modern hardware. Most games aren't really affected by a CPU slowdown, so the huge performance drop I saw was certainly proof to how heavily Adobe's Creative Cloud uses the GPU. Playing any sort of 3D desktop game would be highly impractical while rendering a video. Video editing surprisingly wasn't that bad. There certainly was a performance drop, especially while scrubbing, but playback performance was smooth, even with color correction applied. I would compare the experience to editing on a mid-range MacBook. Good, but not great. So let's get down to business and compare the render times. Our baseline score was 5 minutes and 24 seconds, not too shabby, but things slowed down significantly once I started multitasking. Even just web browsing added an additional 28 seconds to the render time, an 8% increase. Video editing and gaming were close, each adding about 40 seconds to the render time. So there is certainly a noticeable performance drop if you choose to use your computer while it's rendering. But the drop was surprisingly small to me. To me, the convenience of being able to use my computer while rendering is worth a relatively small 8% performance drop. Then again, there's also the option of getting a new computer to dedicate solely to rendering. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you liked the video, hit the like button. If not, feel free to the dislike button. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe.